I dreamt up this day, I think about 8 months ago, and when I first thought of it, I don't think I thought how much work this will actually be. So I'm glad it's here, and I'm glad you all are here, and yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. I'm really excited. Let's see. I have a list of people I need to thank, so bear with me for a second. I really want to thank our sponsors, the folks who showed up financially to help us put this on. We're really excited to share a lot of different content with you all throughout the weekend. But our sponsors are the Lincoln Prosperity Group, Action Realty of Lincoln, Citizens Alliance Bay, K Lazy 3 Ranch, Montana Conservation Elders, Wild Montana, Wild Divide Chapter, Wild Montana Shiny Mountains Chapter, Wild Montana Island Range Chapter, and the Wilderness Society. So, thank you everyone who helped us put this on. It's been great. Also, I don't know if y'all noticed, but we have some food in the back. Jammers Barbecue and Cast Iron Cuisine is here tonight. Tonight they have smoked brisket stew with homemade cornbread. You can have sweet pepper or jalapeno cheddar. Sounds pretty good. But they're taking orders tonight, so if you're hungry tonight and didn't get dinner yet, go visit our friends at Jammers. Also, if you're hungry in the morning, they will be doing breakfast burritos. So you can pre-order them tonight, and that helps them out figure out how many they need to make. They'll be open at 5 or 6:30 a.m. and they have a vegan option for those folks who require that. Some more thank yous. So thank you, Jammers, for being here. I also want to say thank you to Niles Houseman. He's the volunteer manager here at Hooper Park. He does so much. I think it's 2 weeks ago, I signed you down several times. He's fixed it several times. So thank you to Niles. He also cleared the tree out when it fell down last week. So yeah, I mean, he's taking care of us, and we're really excited to have his help. I also want to say thanks to the folks who helped me plan this. We'd be in a lot worse shape, I'm going to tell you that, if I had to plan this by myself. So I want to say thank you to Chelsea Moy from the Wilderness Society and Karen Good. I don't know if Karen went. Oh, she's over there. For helping me create the vision for this and bring this together. And then I want to thank a whole slew of other people. Where's Sarah? Sarah Ryan, who did a ton of communications work and organization work to bring this weekend together. I want to thank Aaron Clark, our volunteer organizer and wrangler and rancher of volunteers. No, really without these folks, we couldn't be having this weekend. And so, yeah, thank you to you all. And speaking of volunteers, I want to thank the number of volunteers who are helping us put this on. I think throughout the weekend we have something like 100 different volunteers helping out. Everything from selling merch, greeting people, helping us park, helping us keep this going. And so thank you to the volunteers. We couldn't do this without you. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jack Gladstone. I'm really excited that Jack agreed to join us here this evening. I'm really excited to hear some music and some stories. But Jack is known as Montana's troubadour. He's an enrolled citizen of the Blackfeet Nation, and Jack illustrates American Indian culture through a mosaic of music, lyric, poetry, and spoken word narrative. Jack's a former college instructor, and Jack co-founded the Glacier National Park's renowned lecture series, Native America Speaks. This program was established in 1985 is the longest running, continuously running, Indigenous speaker series in Park Service history. Jack has released 15 critically acclaimed CDs. His latest release, Native Anthropology, garnered the prestigious Best Historical Recording from the Native American Music Association. In the spring of 2013, Jack became the first Montanan to receive the C.M. Russell Heritage Award, given to honor his contribution to the legacy, culture, and life of the American West. That same year, Jack was inducted in the University of Washington, let me slow down just a little bit, Alumni Hall of Fame in the field of speech communication. Then, in April of 2022, Jack received the prestigious Robin W. Winks Award from the National Park Conservation Association for having effectively communicated the values of the national park system to the American public for the last 40 years. So, without further ado, Jack Gladstone. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to be here and with our conservation community and our citizens here of Lincoln, Montana. I'm going to kick this off with probably the most appropriate song I can do it. It was about 4 or 5 days yesterday, and it hit 32 in the St. Mary's Valley. Probably just for about a minute, and it was on its way up again. But what that does is it starts the symphony. Back in one of the very first songs I'd written, it came in September back in 1980, and I was just ready to go back to Seattle. I was still attending the University of Washington then, and all of a sudden the cold hit. And we start this progression of colors, and this progression, the symphony of colors. I wrote this song, I just sat down up in the mountains between Yellow Mountain and Chief Mountain. This is called Autumn Symphony to kick the sing on. Play a symphony, all the birds that fly, and all the trees spreading boughs to the sky. Play a symphony full of fallen colors by the autumn wind that has come once you play. You can play it if you try. Any part if you might. If you have heart enough to try your whole heart, does the city pull your spirit down from the light? Hear the symphony heavy, softly falling scream that rolls in rhythm with the roar of the streets. Hear the symphony that drops her harmonies in pools that glisten with the sun's growing gleam. You can stay here if you like. I will hold you through the night. Together we shall be the melody line, leading our symphony through time. Love is simply a two-part symphony where we can join and be blended as one. Birds and bowing trees make background harmonies while the colors change around our mountains and streams. You can stay here if you like. We'll partake in lovers' rights. Together we shall be the melody line, leading our symphony through time. Leading our symphony through time. Okay. We have for our first storyteller this evening, a gentleman by the name of John Fraley. John Fraley has worked for Montana's State Wildlife Agency for nearly 40 years, mostly in the forests of the Flathead. He serves as an adjunct instructor at Flathead Valley Community College, where he teaches wildlife conservation and other courses. John has written 3 books on Flathead pioneers within Glacier National Park and the Bob Marshall Wilderness. A Woman's Way West, Wild River Pioneers and Rangers, Trappers, and Trailblazers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, John Fraley.
Everybody hear me okay? Wow, this is a little bit intimidating following Jack Gladstone and having Smoke Elser come on the other end. It really is. Tremendous people. Well, I've always been a fan of the Scapegoat. I've always loved it. Okay. All right. We were part of that group of people that used the big W, just everyday people, the citizens, when I was going to the University of Montana in 1972, 73. And as undergrads, we just loved the Scapegoat. It was our go-to place. You know, we had the Heart Lake and Bighorn Lake and the East Fork and the North Fork. All those, it's just such a welcoming, comfortable wilderness. And we spent a lot of time there in all seasons. And as 18-year-olds, we really didn't know what we were doing. The first time we went, in the winter of 72, 73, we rented 3 pairs of snowshoes from the rec center at UM. And we tried to find Heart Lake with a map of the Western Fishing District of Montana. It's just this little dot, you know? We wandered around and ruined all 3 pairs of snowshoes. The rec center declared them destroyed and made us pay $30 a piece for them. And so that was the way we started off. Then the next weekend, though, we figured out where Heart Lake was. We should have just asked a few people. We ended up wandering around the Landers Fork. And we found the lake, caught some Arctic grayling, which is neat because a lot of us were wildlife majors. And one of the people with me that day, that weekend, was Terry Mccoy. And Terry Mccoy, I want you to remember him, and I'm going to talk about him a little later. So the backcountry was still unroaded then. We still had that privilege because of people like Bob Marshall. And later, for wildlife conservation, Bob Cooney. You'd be surprised how much of the role Bob Cooney played on the wildlife end. He went all over and testified about we needed wilderness. We were going to have grizzly bears. We had to have wilderness to protect them. He was quite a great guy in that way. So the heroes of the Scapegoat succeeded in passing the bill through Congress that officially established the Scapegoat on August 20th, 1972. And I was just talking to Smoke about this. He had a long relationship with Tom Edwards. And in Tom Edwards' testimony to Congress in 1968, he called the wilderness the hush of the land. So I always thought it was a beautiful, beautiful phrase to use for it. Cecil Garland also, at that same hearing, you could tell he was just in ecstasy. He mentioned all those places I just mentioned and just loved the Scapegoat. I think everybody probably knows Cecil's story. So with these giants, that's why we have the Scapegoat. The Middle Fork and the Great Bear followed 6 years later, thanks to heroes and users like Smoke Elser and Dale Burke, John Craighead, Bob Cooney, Bud Moore, and so many others. And in my books, actually I've written 4 books now, including Heroes of the Bob. What I try to do is bring all the lesser known people, the outfitters and the Forest Service folks, to the forefront And so people don't forget them. For example, how many of you have heard of Joe Murphy, Chick Grimsley, John Morkel, and Henry Cole? Has anyone heard of all of them? A lot of them, but a lot of them you haven't. So that's the reason I write my books. And so my next book, which is out coming in a couple months, I'm honored to trace a 60-mile trip made by Bud Moore in 1972 to gather facts to argue within the Forest Service, which he was an employee, the preservation of the Great Bear. He never published this journal, but he gave me permission to use it, and it's going to be laid out on the landscape in my next book, so I'm very excited about that. If you haven't ever read any of Bud's stuff, he's an amazing guy. I know all of you that know him. So the outfitters squired citizens into the wilderness, and they were huge heroes because they would bring people in who were influential, and then they would go back out and sell the concept of the wilderness. And they used those voices. The Forest Service Rangers and other pros cared for the land and showed how it was done. So we can always be encouraged to know that if you use the big W, like just all of us here, everyday users are what give the verb and support for the wilderness. So there's so many names and so much work. So to see this summarized, how many of you have read Rick Retz's book, Bob Marshall Company? Or you know about it. Look at the essay that Jim Posowitz, one of my big heroes that I work with a lot at FWP, called Shoulders to the Wheel. And he goes through the beautiful way that this wilderness has been. He says it doesn't matter who the person stood for, it's just somebody stood forward every time, and that's why we have wilderness. So, I'll do a really quick story here. How many of you have had a supernatural experience in the Bob? Oh, come on. Really? Got a bunch of them. Smokes had one, I just asked him. So, I believe that in a spiritual place like the Bob, which is like the cathedral of the wilderness, that there's little space between the natural and the supernatural. And think about what Posowitz called. He called it the Sistine Chapel of the Commons. So that's what he called wilderness. And so are there spirits roaming the Bob? Well, of course I think so. And I think of all the elements and DNA coursing across the landscape by people who loved it. So if that physical aspect's there, why can't the spiritual aspect be there also? So in late 1973, late September, I was a sophomore at UM, and Terry Mccoy, the guy that tried to help me find Heart Lake with a map of Montana, we went up in the Bob and went hunting up there. And why we went was I encountered a ranger at Upper Hollow Lake. Now, I was up there on a backpack trip, and I came around over Pendant Pass. I had seen an elk, and I saw this old ranger, the way I remember it, and he purported to me that he was a ranger at Upper Hollow Lake. Well, later I found out there's no really ranger station there. There's a little way cabin. And I said, boy, I saw this great big bull elk. I sure wish hunting season was on. And the gentleman said to me, oh, it is. It's the early elk season. It's on right now. But you don't want to hunt here. It's too far to get them out. Go to this pass to the south. I hate to give away people's hunting places, but and go there. Try that. And so I asked around a lot after that, and I found out there was no ranger ever stationed up there as in a ranger station. It's just this little ramshackle snowshoe cabin. So I always felt like that was a spirit whispering in my ear, and I'll get into that here in a second. So anyway, after hearing that, Terry and I were driving up to go hunting, and that pass that he told me about the next week. And I followed his advice, and this was October of '73. And Terry flew. This will get into the final part of the story. Terry flew and located radio telemetry elk for Dr. Ream at University of Montana. So he flew into Sapphire. So I figured, boy, he's going to know a lot about elk. This is going to be great. So we could reach Pyramid Pass at dusk, and we saw a big mule deer, but it was a little bit too past shooting hours. So we went and camped at the upper end of the lake, and we planned on having a fire, and then take an easy going start to our hunt. Well, right before dawn, Terry said, "Hey, did you hear that? Get up! Come on, get up!" Well, what do you hear? That's the elk. It's the elk. Can't you hear that? I said, "No, I can't hear it. But I'll follow you." So we went up over these shelves if you've ever been there. And he kept saying, "This way, I hear it over here." And I kept thinking, all right, I'll humor him. I don't think we're going to get up there and see an elk because I don't hear any elk people. So he got up there on this last shelf. He said, come on, come on. We looked over, there was a 6-point bull elk on a bear grass slope about 150 yards away from us. So I don't know how he heard it, and so I heard it click, he shot once, it misfired. So I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to shoot. And then boom, it hit the elk. It kind of staggered like this, and then we turned around and he shot it again, and it went down. So the way I thought about it, Terry Mccoy had taken a beautiful bull elk in the bob that bugled a tune that only he could hear. And it seemed mysterious. Well, U of R Prof. Bob and Kathy Green went in with Terry the following day to pack the rest out on the horse Dusty. And so the next year, Terry and I talked about going again, but we wanted to go to Big Salmon Lake. And so in 1974, on the last day of August, Terry had to go fly for elk and radiant telemetry those elk in the Welcome Creek drainage. And I was supposed to go with them. I was staying in this trailer the night before, but they had to switch planes, a smaller plane. And so it was a pilot and just Terry in the plane. Well, we were going to meet at the forestry building at 11 because he would be done by then. And I had both of our packs in my Volkswagen. But 11 o'clock came and nobody showed up. Noon came and nobody showed up. 12:30 came and nobody showed up. And I thought, I better call Dr. Reed. What's going on? So I called Dr. Reed, and his wife Kathy wrote in her journal that day, John Fraley is frantic. Because think about it, your best friend's in an airplane, in a small airplane, wilderness, and he hasn't come back. What are you going to think, You're going to think he went down. So it took 2 days to find the plane because it went in so steeply. And Dr. Reed finally spotted it in the air search, and it went in at the steep angle. That was the evening of September 1, and they dropped 4 smoke jumpers on the plane because it was so hard to get into. And actually, I was talking to Bill Cyr because Jim Cyr was the spotter on that plane in 1974. I guess a shirt-tail relative. And what they said was when they reached the site, no joy, no life on the ground. So Terry, my friend, was dead at age 19, killed in a small plane crash, flying to locate elk in what is now Welcome Creek Wilderness. And I've visited this remote site about 6 times, the plane crash site, and the place where the spirit elk was, trying to make some meaning out of this. And I just kind of felt like he was only allowed a very short wilderness life. I've been allowed to have a very long one. And it's always haunted me, and I've spent a lifetime wondering about it. So Terry got his beautiful wilderness bull, I think, because a spirit whispered in my ear. I kind of think that's why he got it, because he was only going to live 10 months after that. So finally, 7 months ago, because of an odd twist of serendipity, and Tim Love and some other priests from the Forest Service, I was always trying to figure out, I'd love to find those smoke jumpers and see what it was like when they first jumped that evening, because we never could get a lot of good information about it. And just out of this serendipitous relationship with Tim Love, he called a couple of smoke jumper historians. They looked up and they found all 4 of the smoke jumpers, their names. And I found all of them. And I did a Zoom call with them after 48 years. And they took me back to that night, and my friend died. And he died the day before. And that's the subject of my new book, along with some other stories about 7 different wilderness areas. But so my new book that's coming out in 2 months is called My Wilderness Life, One Man's Search for Meaning in Montana's Backcountry. I think of it as my wilderness heart and soul in 85,000 words, if that sounds logical. And maybe I found some answers writing it, maybe I didn't. And thank you so much for allowing me to share these things with you on this beautiful evening in Lincoln, Montana. And may the scapegoat and the bob live forever.
I'm going in, Marty. Hi, this summer I've been driving bus. Last summer I did it, so I'm a sophomore in the Sun Tours. Sun Tours is a Blackfeet owned and operated tour bus company in Glacier National Park. Because of COVID last year, I didn't have anything indoors and very few things outdoors, so I started doing that. And one of the beautiful things about driving bus is narrating and telling the cultural story. You know, with the story of Glacier and the story of these mountains, we have like the tip of an iceberg, but the vastness and the, I guess, the spirituality of our human beings that were first here over 13,000 years ago kind of comes through the ancient stories of our people. This song is called, been one of the more popular songs since I wrote it in the early 1990s. It's called The Bear Who Stole the Chinook. It's about the long ago time when mysteriously one winter, the Chinook, what our Blackfeet called Siksapoo. Siksapoo means black wind. That's what it's flying saucers, those big clouds way over these mountains. We call it Mistakiks. Mistakiks means the backbone of the world. And without no Chinook one winter, of course, the snow piled up and the firewood was running low and the meat was running low. Even the pemmican was almost gone. A young orphan boy stepped forward and said, "My people, I will help you. I will find out what has happened to the Chinook, and I'll bring her back." Everybody looked at him, looked at one another, shook their heads, packed him a lunch, and off he went. Before too long, though, in his journey towards the mountains, there was a clearing in the forest. He said, "Oh, my animal elders," he says, "Pooksiput, Pooksiput, come here." And then down came an owl, a magpie, caw, caw, and then a weasel, and then a coyote. These four animals gathered. He said, "Thank you for coming, but in your intelligentsia, do you know what happened to the Chinook?" Animals looked at one another, except Magpie. Magpie was kind of quiet, trying to keep secret. Magpie went, "Caw, caw! I know what happened. My relatives on the other side of the mountains told me that their first cousins told them that they seen a grizzly bear taking the Chinook wind into his lodge in an elk skin bag, of all things." Ah, the boy said, "Thank you. Now I'm going to have to find that bear and capture the wind back." Oh, boy. The animals looked at one another, looked at the boy. He thanked them. He did not ask or command them to come with him, but he had taken off a little ways after thanking them. And before you knew it, we had the magnificent five of the long ago time. This is the song, The Bear Who Stole the Chinook. You will participate. Okay, here we go. Everybody give me a growl. Well, the snow came early and they hung deep. The cold blown bitter made the women weep. Our men tried harder but could find no game. Well, in our children's bellies there cried pains. Our elders gathered in the even dawn. They prayed and waited and looked. But little did they know that way up high, the bear had stole the Chinook. Everybody! The bear had stole the Chinook. Well, the ragged orphan boy living alone called to the animals in his home. How the magpie flew on him. The coyote and weasel, there was four of them. As their council met, the magpie caught as their hero shivered and shook. He said, "My relatives told me so." He said, "The bear has stole the Chinook." Say it. The bear has stole the Chinook. Our hero's journey to release the wind turned west to the mountain bear's den. For days they teamed and traveled along. Together they did ascend up to the den that held the Chinook. The grizzly snored and snarled in his sleep. I'll creep close into his locked peak. There punched Owl's eyes with a stick. So they sent in a brother who was lightning quick. The weasel slithered easy through the hole and found the old skin back of the crook. The bear in a rage roared, "Go away!" And the bear said, "I'm the bear who stole the Chinook." Everybody, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Then our friends made medicine, smoke appeared and blew it in the grizzly bear's den. The big old goose fell fast asleep as Kyle crept on in. He found the bag where the wind was kept and pulled it to the light of day. There were prairie chicken put the stitches out. Now the prairie chicken was a consultant. Then the Chinook blew on its way. The Chinook blew on its way. Everybody bring out the wind now. Here we go. There burst suddenly from his sleep. Bear said, our friends all fled, their job complete. The bear in vain pursued the wind. But the warm wind never was again his friend. Now the bear sleeps underground the winter long, slodgy grumbles and looks back to the days of the winter warmth. Now sing it to the bear who stole the Chinook. To the bear who stole the Chinook. Okay, everybody in a bear voice. For the bears, I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. Best growl you've ever growled right now. I mentioned a similar story up and down the front here, up in our glacier, you know, with the weather patterns in June and late June. It resulted in, there's probably 20%, maybe 30% of the Sarvis berry, the Juneberry, Saskatoonberries, have what you will. And it was, it's of concern. You know, the bears are hungry in hell and they're going into the fall now. So just throw some good medicine into the wind and hopefully we'll pull our bears through this winter. I would like to introduce our next storyteller, Maria Murnane. Born and raised on the Rocky Mountain front, has been riding horses since before she could walk. She was a featured poet at the Montana Cowboy Poetry Gathering for over 10 years, and she has hunted in the backcountry for her entire life. She received her formal training in packing horses and mules from Smoke Elson. Maria is in her final semester at International Relations at Carroll College in Helena, Montana. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Maria Murnane. I am disconnecting, Marty.
Hello, I'm Maria, and I want to first thank you all for putting this on and making this possible. I love the backcountry and the wilderness, and so it's great to see and be here with people with the same feeling like that. I also want to thank Sarah Ryan for finally getting a hold of me. I was a little hard to reach over the summer, but I really appreciate being here. And then I also want to thank my dad and family for giving me this life and to be able to do this and smoke was part of that too, through the generations. And my grandpa also is where I go and hunt and in the back country up by Augusta. So I'm a cowboy poet, fourth generation on my dad's side. And this poem that I'm going to do, it's not about Montana, but every time I'm away from home, it reminds me of it, and I think you guys will get the point when I read it here. The Spell of the Yukon by Robert Service. Sorry. The Spell of the Yukon by Robert Service. I wanted the gold and I sought it. I scrabbled and mopped like a slave. Was it famine or scurvy? I fought it. Was it I hurled my youth into a grave? I wanted the gold and I got it. I came out with a fortune last fall. Yet somehow life's not what I thought it. And somehow the gold isn't all. No, there's a land. Have you seen it? It's the cussedest land that I know. From the big dizzy mountains that screen it, to the deep, death-like valleys below. Some say God was tired when he made it. Others say it's a fine land to shun. Maybe. But there's some as would trade it for no land on earth. And I'm one. You come to get rich, damn good reason. You feel like an exile at first. You hate it like hell for a season. And then you are worse than the worst. It grips you like some kinds of sinning. It twists you from foe to a friend. It seems it's been since the beginning. It seems it will be to the end. I've stood in some mighty-mouthed hollow that's plumb full of hush to the brim. I've watched the big husky sun wallow in crimson and gold and grow dim. Till the moon set, the pearly peaks gleaming, and the stars tumbled out neck and crop. And I thought that surely I was dreaming, with the peace of the world piled on top. The summer, no sweeter was ever, the sunshiny woods, all a thrill, the grayling a leap in the river, the bighorn asleep on the hill. The strong life that never knows harness, the wilds where the caribou call, the freshness, the freedom, the farness. Oh God, how I'm stuck on it all. The winter, the brightness that blinds you, the white land locked tight as a drum, the cold fear that follows and finds you, the silence that bludgeons you down. The snows that are older than history, the woods where the weird shadows slant, the stillness, the moonlight, the mystery. I've bade them goodbye, but I can't. There's a land where the mountains are nameless, and the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless, and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. They're making my money diminish. I'm sick of the taste of champagne. Thank God, when I'm skinned to a finish, I'll pipe to the Yukon again. I'll fight, and you bet it's no sham fight. It's hell, but I've been there before, and it's better than this by a damn sight. So, me for the Yukon once more. There's gold, and it's haunting and haunting. It's luring me on as of old. Yet, it isn't the gold that I'm wanting, so much as just finding the gold. It's the great, big, broad land way up yonder. It's the forests where silence has lease. It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder. It's the stillness that fills me with peace. Thank you. So, I'm from Shoto, so over that way. I know where it is. And, you know, there's been quite a few talks about grizzly bears. And I have a story for you since I've been going there for a while. I was hunting with my dad. I was young, I don't know, like 12 or something like that, and it was bow hunting season. It was a beautiful fall day. The leaves were just turning gold, and we're sitting there. My dad's cow calling and nothing, you know. So it's about shooting light, and like, okay, well, it's a little bit dead. So we headed on back towards camp slowly, and we stopped for a little minute, and my dad bends over and reaches for a gold leaf. And you know, as he's reaching, I'm just kind of standing there, looking around. Oh yeah, this is cool. Like, what are you doing, Dad? But you know, this is cool. And I look over, and across my dad's right here, across from there, I see this grizzly. And I'm like, Dad, there's a grizzly. Dad, there's a grizzly. And he's like, what, where? And I'm like, over there. And so that was about 20 yards away. And since then, well, I think my dad's probably the dad and brother are the only people that will go hunting with me because I kind of track the bears. But, you know, gotta love them and respect them for sure. And it's part of the beauty of the wilderness. And so when we go back in the Bob Marshall, we take horses, our own private pack string. And it's a good time, cold wind kissing your face, and it's a great time. And this next poem I'm going to do, I'm sure a lot of you who outfit and stuff will understand this. And it's a good poem. Anyway, I've known this is probably the first poem I ever learned, and it's about horses. Horses versus Hostas by Somar Barker. Well, I heard an old-time cowhand swapping off some drawling talk about them nags men used to ride who didn't like to walk. He spoke of them as hosses, so I up and asked him why he didn't call them horses. Well, a gleam come in his eye. And this is what he told me, be it right or be it wrong, some salty information that I'd like to pass along. If you go out to the racetrack or some modern riding school, what you find them riding there is horses, as a rule. You'll see them dressed in blankets when they raise a little sweat and bedded in warm stables so they don't get cold or wet. Their saddles are postage stamped, they're combed and curried slick. Their riders bobble up and down like monkeys on a stick. Them pretty tricks are horses, son, but that there ain't the word. We used to call them shaggies that we rode behind the herd. They may not be so pretty, but they stayed outdoors all night. Maybe weighed 900 pounds, all guts and dynamite. They took you where you had to go and always brought you back, without no fancy rations that you purchased in a sack. They loped all day on nothing but your 2 hands full of grass, and on a Stetson full of water, they could climb a mountain pass. They swum you through the rivers and they plowed you through the sand, you and your heavy saddle, and they learned to understand which end of the cow the tail was on. So all you had to do was sit up in that saddle while they did the cow work too. Well, sometimes they sort of dodged your ropes and sometimes they bucked you high, but they were sure an apple in an old-time cowhand's eye. These stable pampered ponies may be horses, sure enough, but them old cow range hosses, they was born to take it rough. And that's how they took it till they earned a tougher name than these here hand-fed ponies, also delicate and tame. So you can have your horses with their highfalutin gloss. I'll take 4-legged rawhide. In other words, a hoss. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it one more time from Maria Murnane. The last story I told through song was a story about a hero. A hero frequently in mythology comes up through the ranks, and to simplify it, ecocentric. In other words, a hero recognizes his or her relationship to the larger picture, whether it's the family, the community, the nation, the state, sometimes the entire world. and the hero's sacrifice, put it on the line. But one thing about the hero is they discover themselves a part of a larger connection, you know. And there is the anti-hero, the trickster. The next song is going to be about our Blackfeet trickster, Napi. Old man Napi. Napi came in the long ago time, and with the introduction of human consciousness, and we know that we have sunlight and shadow involved. Animals are from the Creator, and the Creator has supplied these animals with qualities, characteristics, virtues that we are likely to find, hopefully we'll find, because this is the most direct spiritual inspiration we can possibly summon. Anyways, I would like to share with you a song called Wolves of Ice and Snow. I was asked by one of our passengers on a Sun tour, do you Blackfeet have any story about what's going on with the climate right now? And I back for a second, and I said, I think I wrote one on the last album. In the long ago time, old man Napi was walking along Mistapkik's, the backbone of the world. And then he heard some drumming, and he felt there were some bells, there was some dancing, there was some singing, there was a party going on. And he crawled up to the top of a ridge and he looked over, and there was one of these massive crystalline rivers of ice that we know today as glaciers. Napi went strolling down there. The wolves were eating. But as before he strolled down, he saw the wolves, whatever they desired, they could acquire with a song and with a dance. What is a song but a type of affirmation, a type of expression of intention? But what is the dance? That is getting down to the work in order to actualize what you are affirming, what you are intending to do. So Napi come down and said, "Okay, Mccoy, hello wolves." Wolf Chief looked up and said, "Okay, Napi, it's time to eat. Come on, sit down with us." You see, the wolves were always sharing with people in the long ago time. Wolves had developed the gifts of cooperation, of communication, of coordination, because one wolf no way could bring down a buffalo. One wolf no way could bring down an elk or a moose. Wolves understood that they had to work in concert to do big things. In order for humans to do big things, ultimately, in order for humans to adapt to the northern hemisphere of planet Earth, they had to learn to give up the appropriate part of themselves to merge into something far larger and greater. Napi was finally allowed by the wolves. They taught him the song and the dance. And then Napi went, he promised never to misuse his power. But of course Napi was Napi. This is the story of the Wolves of Ice and Snow. The day was young, the sky full of sun, crystal rivers shivered in the earth's backbone. When old man heard the comforting words of the wolves singing high, dancing low, soft howl everybody now. Songs were sung, dance was spun, steps aligned in rhythm, given path to grow. In humble face, old man was amazed by the wolves singing high, dancing low. There before his eyes he saw a portion of the ice did thaw, and lo behold, there sprang a buffalo. Upon this occasion, a portion of creation was released in pairs into the world below. Through the blessings of the wolves of ice and snow. old man hast that both song and dance be swiftly given as a gift from forth to him. In trust he received, then left to retrieve for himself more pleasure in the wind. Up and down the backbone I'll be hunted for adventure, soon to find a sparkling river frozen in the sun, upon ice forbidden by an elder's admonition. His gift became unraveled, a promise was undone. Okay, all of the women, soft howl now. Okay, let's turn it up a little bit. All of the men, give me a howl. Okay, now for the 50th anniversary of the Scapegoat Wilderness Pack. Everybody howl together. Harmonies like I've never heard. Humble happenstance delivered to dance before self-righteous ego triggered trust to decay. Their crystalline river remains clearly to see as the trail some call the Milky Way. As you're looking through the jaws of heaven to the stars above, consider the limits of the known. Whenever despair comes, the cycle of the earth and sun in certain time transitions dust to clone. Through the blessings of the wolves of ice and snow, we're interwoven with the wolves of ice and snow. The day is still young, the sky's full of sun. Thank you. Give yourselves a pause. Big lineup here. We got Smokey Elser that's coming up here. And Smokey Elser worked for the Helena National Forest and then the Whitetail Ranch as an outfitter and guide business in Ovando until 1964, when Smokey began his own packing business, Wilderness Outfitters. He was the owner-operator for 38 years. Smokey continues to teach his packing class and serves in associations and on boards to protect the wilderness. In 60 years, he has never missed packing into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. Give him a hand for that one. Smokey is one of the most beloved and self-taught and trusted packers in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Smoke Elser to the stage. Marty, I'm disconnected. 5, 4, 3. Marty, I'm disconnected. 1.
You're good.
Got it!
First of all, thank you everybody for coming out. You know, the Lincoln Scapegoat, as I know it, has been around for a long time, 50 years and beyond that. So I want to thank everybody here for coming out and helping us celebrate its 50th year as a real wilderness. So, and I've got a lot of friends here. Penn Edwards, you know, Tom Edwards is one of the guys that employed me at the Whitetail Ranch. And Penn Edwards and his son are here. Let's see, lots of people that I know. Howie Fly is here. He's an old friend of mine. He's working beside a lot of people in there. And Howard Copley in particular. But anyway, I'd like to maybe tell you a little story about the beginning. the very beginning of the Lincoln backcountry and the Scapegoat wilderness. It started many years ago. In 1957, I came to work for Tom Edwards. And after about a week at the ranch, Tom sent me over with a friend of Tom's, Ed Gary, and he said, we want you to build a fence. Now, we're going to actually move it. We have to move it about 30 feet into a wider road site. So all the other neighbors around there they were moving their fences over. And lo and behold, the next thing we knew, about 2 years later, here's a turnpike crown road going into the North Fork of the Blackfoot. And it went all the way up to the Blackfoot River. And then there, they built a cement bridge. I mean, a stout, good bridge. And they were actually going to log the northeast side of Ovanda Mountain, which they did. And they cut a lot of timber there. And as time went on, about 1960, all of a sudden motor homes and camp trailers became very popular. So the Forest Service, they said, well, let's build a scenic highway. We'll call it the Lincoln Scapegoat Scenic Highway.
I remember that.
Yeah, they built another bridge then, a wooden bridge over the Lake Creek, and they started advertising this scenic highway. And the first thing they did is, right when if you ever cross the bridge going up the North Fork, the cement bridge, there's a little grade there, and right at the top of that grade, there's two stumps there. They're about that big around, and they're now about a foot and a half high, mainly because we cut them that size. But on those posts at one time, there was a piece of plywood. It was a 4x8 piece of plywood, all painted up very nicely. And they had the road drawn on there that came out at Meadow Creek over here. And so that's the way they were going to build this highway. It would go up Lake Creek, hit the lakes at Lake Otazzi, and they would build a campground there. And then it would go down Canyon Creek and drop down on the dry fork of the Blackfoot, and go down to about where the ranger station sits right now. They were going to build another campground there. They had them all marked there, number 1, number 3, and all that. Anyway, then they started up the east fork of the Blackfoot, and they come to Meadow Creek, and they were going to build a campground there too. And they were going to, of course, build them so that they could get motor homes and big trucks and all that kind of stuff in there. And then they went on up, and they came to another lake called Parker Lake. Parker Lake, great place to build a nice campground again. And then on to, they actually got to Webb Lake, built another campground, and then come out of the Indian Meadows up just up here, up the road about 10 miles. So that was the first road that was planned in the Bob Marshall. Well, Howard Coatneighbor and a bunch of the regulars like Howie Fly and some of the other guys that I know, we were all sitting around the table and just finished supper. It was about 7:30, 8 o'clock. We were all telling stories and just sitting there and relaxing a little bit. And Howard says, have you ever seen that sign over on the North Fork? And so we'd seen it, but we never stopped and paid any attention to it. We thought it was just another sign. But anyway, he said, let's go over and take a look at it. And he said, by the way, Smoke, throw the chainsaw in the back of the international truck, which I did. And they had an orange and white international truck pickup. And a bunch of us jumped in the truck and rode up there to the North Fork and got off and walked up to this sign, looked it all over, kind of traced the road that was going to be built into the Lincoln backcountry. And we studied it very carefully to see where it was going to go. Howard, at that time, I heard Howard pulling on the chainsaw twice. And it started up, and we cut that sign down and pushed it into the North Fork of the Blackfoot. And that's about the same time that Tom Edwards got involved in the Lincoln Scapegoat.
Woo!
And him and Cecil Garland were the leaders in this, and Tom and Cecil met many times at the Whitetail Ranch. A lot of times I was sitting in the back corner of the lodge, just listening to them talk about how they were going to try to make it a real wilderness. And boy, Cecil, there's nobody that had his heart into it any more than Cecil. He actually gave his life for the Lincoln Scapegoat and the Scapegoat Wilderness. But at any rate, that was one of the stories that I wanted to make sure everybody understood. Now, of course, we closed that road. It's not going to happen. And there is just a trailhead now on the north fork of Blackfoot. And then one other story I'd like to tell, maybe. You know, the highest mountain in the Scapegoat Wilderness is Red Mountain, 9,422 feet. It's higher than Scapegoat. And believe me, I've been up on Scapegoat several times, and I've been up on Red Mountain. Tom Edwards, we used to start out, we'd go into Meadow Creek Lake every spring and set up a fishing camp there. And it was usually a couple, 3 wall tents and a nice big kitchen tent, and we'd set this camp up. And every year, then we'd bring fishermen in there, and they would go fishing in the lake course. Now the lake, it was kind of a little low, so Tom Edwards we managed to pack in some steel fence posts and put a little wire across there and build a little dam. We raised the depth of the lake about a foot, but it made it real good fishing. But anyway, they would fish for a while, and then Tom always liked to take them on a ride somewhere, and he always went to Red Mountain. Now, if you come in from Indian Meadows and you go by Webb Lake, and as you're going west, you'll come across the first trail to the left, and that goes up to the top of Red Mountain. Well, I went with them the first time, and we rode up, switched back up to the top of the mountain, and there's a lookout. Just the remains of it. They had burned the lookout down. And it's set on a kind of a shelf of rock, so that the lookout didn't have to be on any stilts or anything else. And Tom would tell a story about the lookout, how it was there and what it was for. And quite often when we'd leave that area, we'd come down and drop into Sourdough. Instead of following the trail, he would cut across country and drop into Sourdough, and he'd go on back to Meadow Creek Lake and our fishing camp. But the interesting thing about the top of the mountain is that the lookout, built on a shelf of rock, solid rock, had no place for a toilet facility. So what they did is they went down the trail about a mile or two and cut off a couple of lodge poles about this big around. And they peeled them, took all the bark off of them, and then they went up to this cliff, which drops about 800 to 1,000 feet. And by the way, it faces Lincoln. But at any rate, they took these 2 poles and they stuck them out over this cliff. Drilled holes in the cement, or in the rock, and then poured cement around bolts and bolted those 2 poles that stuck out like that. And then they put up a nice facility. That had the biggest vault in the whole world. 800 feet. A lot of work. But at any rate, the interesting thing about it is there was always a little coffee can sitting in there about this big. And I'd always ask my guests, as well as Tom would ask his guests, what do you think they use that for? And it's full of little rocks about the size of a marble. Now, everybody'd say, oh, throw it to birds, or keep the chipmunks back, or whatever. And no, that's not what it was for. It was for the toilet paper, because otherwise the updraft would not allow. Anyway, that's some of the stories. I've got lots more stories I can tell you. It's getting cool, and let's let Jack. I really like to hear Jack sing. And he talked about nappy, and I had a Native American working for me for several years. His name is Tyson Running Wolf. And Tyson, he always told lots of stories about nappy. And those stories would be about how the bark got chipped off of the trees, with a rock rolling down the hill, how they tried to harvest berries at the bottom of a creek when they actually were hanging above the creek, but the reflection showed like under the water. But anyway, lots of stories that I can tell you about that. But Bob Marshall is a great place. The Lincoln Scapegoat is another great place, and that's a place you can get to real easy. Real easy. There's no big pass going into the Lincoln Scapegoat. So, and again, thank you all for being here, and let's keep that a wilderness forever, and let's make sure that we can all enjoy it forever.
In the presence of icons. I love this place. Okay. We're going in, Marty? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius had a great quote, and I first heard it actually was in the opening minutes of the movie Gladiator. Russell Crowe there, and he was getting ready to lead his troops into battle, and he was leading them into battle, and he said, "Men, what we do in life echoes through eternity." And then they went for it together as a team. This is a song called "The Builder." It's been real dear to me over time, and "The Builder" was originally dedicated to my Uncle Chet, who's a stonemason. And one of the things, stonemasons are good builders, whether it's log or stone or interstate construction. They recognize what they do. You know, we're driving up here, we're driving down here along the front, and I was pointing out to my traveling partner, Susan, I said, there's the first generation of road, you can just barely see it at the contours, second generation, and we're on the third generation of Highway 89 right now. Song, and I have speaking to my grandma, the trails became roads and the roads became old, something we can appreciate, you know. And as they complete the last stretch up at Milk River above St. Mary's, the Highway 89, and that pretty much wraps it up there. But I want to do the song and dedicate it to our conservation community in the Scapegoat Wilderness 50th anniversary. This song is called "The Builder." Hopefully what we do will radiate one hell of a long time. And one of the things I'm doing right now is working a project and researching around the turn of the century, 100 years ago, 120 years ago, there were influential people involved in Charlie Russell, involved in recognizing before it was too late, before everything became privatized, the public trust we had here in Montana. George Bird Grinnell, James Willard Schultz, and the stories are a start, but actually the protection and then the resonance of it. Again, what we do in life echoes through eternity, and that's why we are here tonight, because somebody took that time. A lot of those people are probably gone on right now. But the song is called "The Builder," for the builders. On the journey that we climb to the summit of the mountain, we do find there are heroes, there are fools, there are builders ever reaching for their tools. With their tools they build walls that stand solid, fresh and tall. You know building is a risky thing to do when the work you perform outlasts you. Through the romance, through the dance, over rolling plains troubled circumstance. Through the journey, we are born. Always keep your dreams alive over the storm. And may your dreams form a love that survives you. We remember your warm grin and the trickster that would make us smile again. You built bridges, you built walls, but now we find you built your spirit in a soul. Through the joy and through the pain, through the loving, through the rain. Sometimes rainbow colors aren't easy to see. How you forgive and how you love is the key. Call and response through the romance, through the romance, through the dance, through the dance over rolling plains of troubled circumstance. Through the journey, we are born. We are born. Always keep your dreams alive. Always keep your dreams alive over the storm. And may your dreams form a love that survives you. One more time through the romance. Through the romance, through the dance. Through the dance over rolling plains. Over rolling plains of troubled circumstance. Through the journey, we are born. We are born. Keep your dreams alive. Always keep your dreams alive over the storm. And may your dreams form a love that survives you. Our children carry the love that survives you. Jim Positives also. Okay. Last winter I had my hip done. It was good surgery. Everything came out okay. And while I was in recovery though, I learned when I'm 64. So I do that song quite a bit right now because I am 64. Okay, we have our final. This is a group, a storytelling group. The Scapegoat is in Kenny Lowe's blood. Kenny and his wife, Crosby, have owned K Lazy 3 Outfitters since 2015. He's named after the original owner, Kenny Hoffman, and he grew up in the backcountry, learning to wrangle and guide from old-timers like Ronnie Mills, Brett Todd, and Jake Hooker, or Jack Hooker. They run 3 to 7 day pack trips into the Scapegoat and Bob Marshall, and they run 3 hunting camps in the fall. Howie Fly began his adventure as a backcountry packer and guide in 1956 at just 12 years old. He spent upwards of 20 years working with wilderness outfitters like Howard Copenhagen and Tom Edwards, until he found a new love in 1971, his wife, Peggy. Bill Cyr grew up in the Lincoln backcountry, today known as the Scapegoat Wilderness, helping his grandfather with his outfitting operation. Some of his earliest and fondest memories. Bill is still living the dream today as a Scapegoat Wilderness outfitter. Rick Dunkerly's love of the outdoors and hunting led him to call Montana home in 1987. He got his first job as a wilderness outfitter in the Lee Metcalf Wilderness before settling in Lincoln and purchasing his own outfitting operation, Mineral Creek Outfitters. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Scapegoat, Kenny Lowe, Howie Fly, Bill Cyr, and Rick Dunkerly. Unplugging, Mark, unplugging.
Can you hear us okay? Okay, good. All right, now, I'm going to tell a couple of stories. I learned them from other people like Tom Edwards and Howard Copenhaver and all those people. One of the things is I moved to the Copenhaver Ranch at Hartmore Outfitters, it was called in those days, in 1956. I was 12 years old. And they took me in like I was one of their own kids and they basically raised me from that time on. So I got to do a lot of packing and see a lot of country. We went into, the first trip into the wilderness area, which is, well, I wasn't in the wilderness area then, but it is now, of course. We went up through Meadow Creek on the Ogden Trail. And I don't know if any of you ever knew what the Ogden Trail was. But over the pass, which we call Ogden Pass, and would be up above Alpine Park when you're inside the area there. And they had a mine up there. Ogden did, and his trail went straight up the mountain, and there was no switchbacks. It went up the mountain and over the top. And I can remember one time we was going up with Gene Copenhaver, and he says, "Right here's where Ogden stopped." And I said, "Well, how's that?" And he says, "See all those whiskey bottles laying there? That was his halfway stop with his 90-pound pack that he carried to the top of the pass and over." And when we went in there was incredible buildings that they had built in the mine, and we went all through, and I brought a snowshoe out with me, and it's hanging in the museum in Orlando if you ever want to see it. But anyway, that's a different story. That was my first trip in there. I got to tell you some other stories. I'm going to tell you one on smoke too. But anyway, so we had one trip we was on, there was quite a few of us, we was in a big prairie. We camped at Herb Tokey's camp. And Howard always believed to camp in other people's camps, they all agreed to keep the country from being worn down, because when you camp here, you wear the grass down there, build fire pits, and do all that stuff. It gets stupid. In fact, we were at Big Prairie at Herb Tokey's camp when Howard had a lot of the guys. Jack Dolan was the ranger at that time at the station. He was a one-armed fellow. And he came over to the camp, and Howard says to him, he says, "I got to show you guys something. This has got to change." And he took them down to the river, and there was several fire pits right along the river there. He says, "This has got to stop." He says, "This is not a wilderness experience when there's a fire pit every 20 feet down the river. Everybody doesn't have to have the same fire pit. Have a new one, I should say. They just keep building new ones and they don't get rid of them." And one of the things about Howard is, and that was where Leave No Trace started, and Howard coined that phrase. A lot of people don't understand it, but I was standing there. He coined the phrase, "Leave no trace." And Smoke can vouch for this. When we left camp, the packers at the end, when the cook string left and the guides, or not the guides, but the cook, we policed the camp area. We picked up cigarette butts. We picked up any sign of a man being there. And if any of you read Howard's books, they left their tracks. That was the only thing we left at a camp, was a track. Because we got rid of the fire pit. In fact, we dig the grass out, build a fire pit, and that plug of grass went back in that hole when we left, and the rocks went back in the river. And that has to be done today. But people don't understand that. They garbage everywhere. They got to quit. But anyway, I'll tell you a better story. Here we are, we're camped in Big Prairie, and to give you an idea, it was a group of ladies who were with us. They ranged from, 25 to 65 years old. And there was 30 of them. In those days, pack trips are a little different than they are now. And we were standing there, and there was myself and Pete Lineberger. He packed with us. He's a lawyer now, and Ted Clatterbuck. Some of you may have heard of him, and then Lefty Jensen, a couple of the other guys were there. It was 5 packers altogether. We're standing there, and the bell mare from the trip comes stomping up to the standing there, and she says, "Mr. Coconaber, we are out of toilet paper, and I want to know what you're going to do about it." And we're all kind of standing there, and Ted Clatterbuck, I don't know if you know, he always wore his hat off to the side like this, and he goes, "Well, Howard, we could run them through the tall grass." That isn't funny, mister. Anyway, so Howard went to the radio station and borrowed some toilet paper. And so there was a lot of trips like that. We spent a lot of time in Howard's camp was at White Creek, which is in now the Scapegoat Wilderness area. And I got to thinking this morning when I got up that camp, if they'd have put that road in, would have been a mile from that camp. And it would have been non-existent. And all the outfitters all through this country would have been out of business. They would have had no place to outfit anymore. But anyway, that's some of the things that go on. And the thing with the ladies is it's the truth, because this is one thing a lot of people understand. Smoke was the best camp cook you have ever eaten food. He could cook unbelievable meals. And at that time, when Tom, we were all working for Tom Edwards, he was the camp cook. And Tom was the one that named him Smoke. A lot of people don't know that. But why he named him that, I don't know. Maybe it was because of the stories he's telling. They were always smoking. Just but anyway, that's the way it was when we were packing. Because think about it. In those days, a pack string was 10, and there was 5 packers. So that gives you an idea how big our trips were. 100 head of horses on one trip was nothing. You can ask Smoke about that. We did it all the time, all summer long. We'd go from the ranch. We'd end up at Holland Lake. We'd end up over to Augusta. We'd end up back up the Swan somewhere on one of them trails coming down. And we were never back to the ranch the whole summer till hunt season started. Unless the trip happened to start then. But that's just the way it was then. And I don't have any more to say.
So I'm Kenny Lowe. I grew up in this valley. My dad was an outfitter here. I was named after Kenny Hefner, who started the KOAZ retreat. My wife is the one that makes the people come back to our business. I don't talk a lot. I'm pretty quiet. But I thought this was important. I think the people that I think it's very important to keep the Scapegoat Wilderness, the history alive, with how that started and what was what and how things got named. I don't have a lot of good stories, but you ride by the lakes, and Tom Edwards has built, my understanding, there's rafts in every one of those lakes, and you can see them. They're still together, but they're sunk. And he would take those fishermen to those lakes, and my dad would tell stories how he'd go up over Red Mountain. And I can't imagine that, because the guests we take these days, there's no way that they would do things like that. Come down through Sourdough, there ain't even a trail in there. I know where the bottom of that trail is. I know where the trail is to get into the basin, and I'm pretty sure that the top end of that, but it's all big rock slides around that thing. I couldn't imagine my guests. I looked him in the eye and said, "Yeah, if we're going to ride down that," I'm like, "Yeah, probably not." But outfitting has been my family's life since I can remember. I remember I got to go stay with Cecil when I was 8 or 9 in Utah. If I'd have known then where my life was going to go, I'd ask a million questions. I guess a good story. My dad would tell a story that Cecil had bought a bunch of mules, and Kenny Hefner took them, and they were thoroughbred mules, so they were wild. And my dad said you could never turn them loose, because if you turn them loose, they'd take off and go home. And he said they turned them loose at the old Meadow Creek camp, not the one we have, the one way down where the East Fork and Meadow Creek come together. And he said he finally caught them at the wilderness sign. He had to rope every one of them. They were so wild, you couldn't get near them.
He thought he had them pinned off in Parker Lake, and they just jumped in the lake and swam away from it. Those kind of people are gone. You don't see. There's a new generation of outfitters that tries to do things different than these old guys did, and those old guys did the things they did for a reason, because it worked back there, you know. And I learned from. I got to work for Jack Hooker for a few years, and he was very inspirational into making me who I am. And you know, we still turn our stock loose at night, and then go find them in the morning. A lot of our trips I learned from Jack. You know, I can remember camping on top of Scapegoat Mountain with pack strings. You know, we take a pack string like that. You know, nobody does things like that anymore, and I've really tried in our business to keep all that alive. That's very important to me. You know, it's funny, I stand here because like Rick worked for my dad, and then I worked for Rick, you know, and I worked for Jack, and it's a big circle and it's a big family, and it's very important to me that it stays that way. I'll let one of these other guys talk.
Thank you.
I'm Rick Dunkerly, yeah. So, I'm the most unlikely guy to be up here. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. Came to Montana in '85, actually, Karen. But I did start working in the woods, out guiding hunters down in the Lee Metcalf Wilderness in '87. So I'd done that for a few years and ended up following a job here to Lincoln, and went to work for Kenny's dad, Les Nader at Red Mountain Outfitters. And I worked for Les for 7 or 8 years, and had the opportunity to buy the camp in Mineral Creek off of Ronnie Mills from Augusta, and bought that camp in '99 and ran it. And I'll give you, I had a different funny story in mind, but I'll give you one about Kenny, since he admitted that he worked for me. But the first year I had the camp, I was kind of scrounging for stock, and I bought a couple of Appaloosa mules from a guy over in Cascade, and they weren't the best mules. They were a little bit wild. And we got to camp one time. We had hunters, got into camp with the string, and I might be the only outfitter that packed beer. You know, that was kind of a no-go. Usually it was whiskey because it was less to pack. But I had such a good cook who drank, I can't remember the beer now, but he had to have beer. So I packed a lot of beer. So I had one of those little mules had panniers on with supplies for the cook tent, and our camp was on 2 levels, the cook tent being on the upper level. So we'd unloaded, and I wasn't really paying attention, and I said, well, this goes to the cook tent. And they took off with this little happy mule, Kenny and another guy working for me. Well, that mule did not like being taken up there alone. He was pretty herd bound. So he got a little ways up the hill, and those guys decided they wanted a beer. So they got in the panniers and started, well, all that rattling, and I can't remember the mule's name. Jackie, all right, he remembers. Jackson, that's right, yeah. Well, Jackson had had enough, and he uncorks right there, and bucks and gets away, and he's going home. He's not hanging around camp. He's not herd bound enough. He was out of there. He was spooked. So off he goes, and it's a little over 2 miles from camp to where the Mineral Creek Trail cuts off of the main line. And we had a drift fence out there so we could turn stock loose at night, but Jackson didn't honor that drift fence in any way. He just blew right through it. Well, I was not happy about the situation because there goes the mule. Well, Kenny ended up, I don't remember, he chased him past Meadow Creek before he caught him. He says he caught him at the old Meadow Creek camp. So it was a pretty good chase there. Well, the mule had panniers full of groceries on him when he left. And later that evening, here comes one of my hunters, and I had him close to camp. He comes walking in, and he's laughing a little bit, and he comes up to me and he says, "Man, Rick," he says, "I've been in a lot of camps." He said, "But nobody has ever left beers along the trail for me like that." So That's just, Smoke would win the award for the most stories, no doubt. But if you've been in that business, you have stories. And a lot of them are funny. And like I say, lots of stories, and some of them are not appropriate for a large crowd like this, but I am a person who, all I ever wanted to be, even as a little kid in Pennsylvania, was an outfitter. I can't tell you why, I don't know, but I knew that was what I wanted to be. I've had a lot of jobs, a lot of weird jobs, but the only job I ever had that I wanted was to be an outfitter. So I did that, and I did it for, guided and outfitted for close to 20 years. And I came here from that Lee Metcalf wilderness, and it's a wilderness, but it's nothing like the Scapegoat and the Bob. It's little in comparison. And I wanted to be here. I knew before I was ever here, I had to come and be in this country, just the bigness of it. And since then, I've been all over. I've hunted, Alaska half a dozen times, northern Canada, into some huge wilderness, where places where when the plane leaves, you really think, could I walk out of here? And I like that feeling. That is, for me, that's the ultimate feeling. I was in Alaska in May, out in the Beckeroff National Wildlife Management Area. And it's, you take a plane in there and you fly for several hours, and then that plane flies away, and you really kind of know, man, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And that to me is it. And you all must feel something along those lines, or you wouldn't be out here tonight. So when I was a little kid, and I tried last night to look up who made this quote, and I couldn't find it. In my memory, it was Confucius, but I think I'm wrong. But the quote is, where the masses see beauty, there's already ugliness. And these guys saved it. There's no ugliness back there. They kept the masses out, and thank you. And, I hope you all get the chance to appreciate it. One of the things that I tell people that like the outdoors is go spend a night by yourself back there. It's a whole different thing. And you find out a lot about yourself. So, yeah, thanks for being here and supporting the wilderness here, and use it.
My name is Bill Cyr, and my relationship with the wilderness is kind of threefold. I grew up, my grandfather had an outfitting business here in Lincoln and up in Spotted Bear, the Diamond R guest ranch. So I got to grow up as a young kid, spending my summers up at Spotted Bear and running around the Diamond R. And if you've ever been up there, it's just an incredible place, that whole spotted bear country. Imagine a little kid just got the whole country back there to myself, and I just really enjoyed that. And I got to go in with my grandpa a lot. One of the trips that he would do quite often, every summer, do it 2 or 3 times, would be from Lincoln. He'd get clients in, and they'd go all the way to Spotted Bear. And I got to go on a couple of those trips, and just incredible memories, riding all the way from Lincoln to Spotted Bear. And I really appreciate that early childhood memories of doing that. Later in life, I got to work for Mary Faith and Kenny Hefner. Kenny mentioned them, and Kenny's named after them. And working for Mary Faith and Kenny, I got to experience guiding and getting to know, taking people in who didn't get to see this country all the time. One time I remember it was a summer trip. Some of you from Lincoln might remember Charlie Horsey. Charlie was from Lincoln. His dad was a judge in Helena. He'd grown up and become a lawyer. He'd actually gone back to D.C. Was on one of the president's cabinets, I guess, in the 60s. But Charlie would come out every summer and go in the hills with Mary Faith and Kenny, and he'd bring a lot of people from Washington, D.C., a lot of politicians and very influential people. I remember one summer trip, we're back there, we're in camp, and Trivial Pursuit was just coming out. All of us were playing Trivial Pursuit in the cook tent, and Charlie and this other older lawyer, they didn't want to play. And every question that would come up, most of us wouldn't have a clue what the answer was. Charlie and this other lawyer, they knew every answer. If it referred to a place, someplace on the planet, they had been there. It was just amazing to see how these really educated, really worldly men just loved being back in the wilderness. And I can always remember Charlie get up early in the morning, he prided himself on being the first one up and starting the fire with one match, and just really neat to see that. And then he would go back to DC and have his other life. And it was kind of neat to see that in people's lives. Another story I want to share again about working for Mary Faith and Kenny. I don't know those of you who've ever set up an outfitter's camp, and there's a lot of work goes into an outfitter's camp. You've got cook tents and guide tents and hunter's tents, got a tack tent. Jeff, Mary Faith's son, Jeff and I had just finished getting the camp all set up. It was just before hunting season. It was actually in the new spot, place where Kenny camps at now. And it was just Jeff and I in there, and we got all the tents set up. Everything's really ready for the hunters. And about a week later, the hunters were coming in. And just across the creek, just out in front of the camp, and across the creek, there's a bull moose and a cow and a calf. And this bull's interested in the cow, and he's kind of following her and grunting and bugling at her or making noises. And I had my elk bugle, and I told Jeff, I said, Jeff, I think I can imitate that bull moose. And so I did, and it wasn't a good idea. That bull moose just spun and came at Jeff, and I came running right up to the edge of the creek. And Jeff grabbed his gun, and we're looking at this camp thinking, man, if that moose comes in here and tears all these tents down, his mom's gonna kill us. And Jeff's got that gun ready, and the moose got right to the edge of the creek. And he looking at Jeff and I, and then he turned around and he'd look at that cow, and he'd look at us. The cow won. He followed her off. So I had to share that story about Jeff in the camp. But the third chapter of this ride I'm on, I've had the privilege of being able to buy an outfitting business, and my son and I are running it. He's running it, I'm not. But getting to share it with people, and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then also, if you're coming back for tomorrow night, getting to be involved with the Lincoln Prosperity Act and kind of this next chapter, I guess, of adding a little bit more to the Scapegoat wilderness and creating a new wilderness, as well as doing a lot of other good things. But just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and if you're coming back tomorrow night, we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Don't leave. Jack's coming back. I just wanted to run through tomorrow's program. We have a lot of really great things happening. If you go over to our Walton over here, you can still sign up for a few hikes if you're interested in seeing some of the area around Lincoln. I think there's 3 or 4, maybe 5 hikes that still have room. So if you want to sign up for a hike, go over to the Green Wall Tent. Most of us start around 8. And then at noon, right back here at Hooper Park, we're going to have the Wild Circle. So we'll have a number of groups from around the area: Wild Montana, Montana Wildlife Federation, Mountain Mamas, all sorts of groups around this circle, teaching you new skills, playing games, figuring new things out, and really engaging in this area and some good things. And I'm excited about it. I'll see you there. Also in the afternoon, so that's from 12 to 4. From 2 to 4, we'll have little kind of mini science talks. One of my friends from Washington is coming. He's going to talk about caving in the Scapegoat on Scapegoat Mountain. Spelunking for some of you. We're going to have a talk about fire. We're going to have a talk about how to science with your kids in the Scapegoat. So it should be fun. And then a lot of you made this request of me, and I did my best to honor it. At 4:30, John Gatchell will be doing his skit about how the Scapegoat wilderness came to be. He did it at the 40th anniversary 10 years ago, obviously. But it was one of the most requested things I got. Is Gatch going to do a skit? I don't know. But he will. He'll be here tomorrow. I haven't seen him yet. But yes, Gatch will be here. At 5 o'clock, we'll welcome Copper Queen, headed by Cole Mannix from Helena. I'm really excited to see Copper Queen. This should be great. At 7:30, we're going to do a quick program about the Scapegoat. We're going to see a new film from that has people here that you might recognize. It'll be really good. And then we're going to have a short talk from some partners in the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal and how important that is to why we're here. And then we'll close out the night with Hillfolk Noir, bluegrassy band from Idaho. I'm really excited. I've heard nothing but good things. You can ask Maddie over there. She's a big fan. So, without further ado, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up about what's happening tomorrow. I hope to see you all back here. Bring your friends if they're not here yet. Oh, go ahead, Sarah. You can yell at me.
The raffle.
Oh, yeah. We
7.
also have some really great raffle prizes. So, K-Lazy 3 donated a pack trip next summer into the Scapegoat. 1 for 10. I'm gonna get this wrong. 1 for 10, 6 for 50, or 12 for 100?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So, yeah, buy raffle tickets. We also have a 30th anniversary print. So the 20 years ago, Monty Dolak painted a painting called Hush of the Land. We have a print from that, which was donated to us. We'll be raffling that off. And then David Goodson, you've seen his work. It's on all the posters advertising this event. He did a hand-pulled print. And so that'll be one of the raffle prizes. So, did I miss anything there?
That's it.
All right. Oh, someone lost their wallet. If you're missing your wallet, it's at the Wild Montana table. So, check your pockets. Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. Jack's gonna come out and sing a couple more songs and a couple more stories. So, thank you and have a great night.
Woo!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a couple of songs and then we'll have this wrapped up by about 8 o'clock. The first of the two is a song, this song I wrote called When Land Belonged to God. We are from Montana. You know, at the Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C., there are two citizens that are revered in this state. Revered enough to be in Statuary Hall, representing the, I guess, the ideals and the principles of our state. The first is Jeanette Rankin, our first woman congressperson elected in 1916. That was 4 years before women suffrage. That's how far Montana was ahead of the curve back in those days. And the second one is Charlie Russell. Charlie Russell is called the cowboy artist. He was to Western art what Michael Jordan probably is to basketball, the best there will ever be. And Charlie Russell committed his life early on. It was about 1886, 1887. That was a really bad winter, and they found out that buffalo were superior, much superior to cows when you had a storm where you didn't have a Chinook wind for months. And it was Charlie Russell who made a little sketch called Waiting for a Chinook, or Last of the 5,000. And that was a hit. And then he went full-time into art. And in his life, I believe over 4,600 illustrations, bronzes, sketches, and major canvas works were created. But what Russell wanted to do was to resonate the drama, narratives, like we've been listening here, but with Charlie it was canvas or bronze or something. And it was, in 1913, the Montana Club, which was a club full of millionaires because of the gold, silver, and copper, the treasure state. Long before it was a big sky country or the last best place, it was called the treasure state. And Russell said, well, what do you guys want? And he said, we just want what Montana means to you. And I went back in time. I was working on the Buffalo Cafe CD. It's the first of 4 CDs I did with Lloyd Maines, the Grammy-winning producer of the Dixie Chicks Home album. And he said, Jack, what we are doing is we're illustrating the story that you are telling. And I went back into the studio, and the last song I did was called When Land Belonged to God. And this is the song dedicated to the painting. You can look up on your phones, images, Land Belonged to God. You can see a massive herd of buffalo crossing the Missouri River. But in the foreground, there's some cows, some calves, and the rest of the herd. But there's a big bull right in the center. And that big bull is putting his head up, and he's looking right at you. And he's asked me, what the hell are you doing here? And that's what we must answer. We have the opportunity to become mentors. There's a lot of mentees out there, and this is for the mentors and the mentees of Charlie Russell, which I believe most of us are. On the spring heat of 16, Charlie Russell departed from his St. Louis home, a young man whose big dreams had delivered a call to the heart. So by train and stagecoach he made his way through an endless sea of grass that blew to the shore of the big sky's unbroken song, where land belongs to God. A rising quad of buffalo, mountains were sentinels for creatures below, stirring tones from long ago that survived an eclipse of the soul. As the curtain closed on our noble play, before the stage was struck by cashiers and surveyors, he carefully captured the scenes of the big sky's unbroken song, danced in rhythm with the land. Grizzly bear and gray wolf were first chiefs, where episodes of old man's travels helped our people first unravel the mystery of sacred time between the earth and sky. Time respects the careful hand when chosen colors drop. The vision forever stands. The purest gift is not of gold, but an art that awakens the soul. As we choose our trail up the great divide to an unknown stage on the other side, we might realign with the seas of the big sky's unbroken song, where land belongs to God. On the big sky's unbroken song, land belongs to God. Thank you. And the original, so many of our priceless Russell originals wound up in Texas because what was it after Russell passed away in 26, state legislature could have bought 30 or 40 of them, I think for $140,000. That was too much money back then. Anyway, they're outside of Dallas Fort Worth right now in the Sid Richardson Gallery. But we got to remember, money. There's Crowfoot and my great uncle. There was Crowfoot, and he said, remember that money burns fast and there's nothing left. But when you have land, it regenerates. It's reborn, and it's our rebirth every year. If not for us, later on it becomes our children and our grandchildren's. Last summer, I was my novice year as a rookie for Sun Tours, and we were taking off on the bus, and in the back seat there was a gentleman. He looked in his early 80s, and he was trembling a little bit, and his children and his grandkids, there was a private tour, and they told him that was their grandpa, and that was their dad. And he was dying of cancer, and he had maybe 2 or 3 months left to go. And here I'm a rookie, and I'm driving up the mountain, and I'm thinking, this is my charge, this is my duty, my obligation, my privilege to share with people Glacier National Park, one of the iconic spots in North America, hell, the world for that matter. And when we got to the stop, it was one of those, we had conditions about a week ago where the clouds were just kind of moving over like a, and I started singing it when I got to the top of the mountain right there. And I've been playing it for damn near every group since then. I would like to invite you to sing. This will be the last song of the evening, and thank you for coming for this 50th anniversary of the triumph of conservation, the triumph of preservation of the land that belongs to God, and essentially. And may our descendants gather together, perhaps here or someplace not too far, for a centennial celebration of the Scapegoat Wilderness. Bows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that paid, but but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels and dizzy dancing where you feel, and every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave them laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way, but now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads and say I've changed, but something's lost when something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know how at all. Clouds, I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. I really don't know clouds. Finish it. I'd like to thank Marty and Benita with Severson Productions for the sound reinforcement, and I would love to thank all of you. I'll be moseying around. I do have a couple CDs if you even have players anymore, but I do have some CDs. And thank you. This is one of the greatest honors I've had.